Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I am Rachel Keesler from the Connecticut Family Support Network, and I am a family support coordinator for the Northeast and the Southeast regions in Connecticut. And just a little housekeeping really quick before the presentation. Please just keep yourself muted during the presentation out of respect for our presenter, April. And there will be a short time at the end, hopefully, for some questions. If you have any, you can put them in the chat as we go along if you'd like, or we can raise your hand at the end. And I'd like to introduce April from Cultivate Behavioral Health and Education. She has a great workshop for us today. So April, I will let you do your thing. Thank you, April.
All right, no problem. So during this presentation, we will be looking at how small positive responses to behavior can lead to big changes over time. Whether your loved one is a child, an adult, or whether you use behavior strategies before or not, this session was completely made with you in mind. So everyone take a deep breath, settle in, and get ready for some encouragement, some practical tools, and hopefully a few aha moments that you can take with you. So I know I was just introduced, but I'm going to introduce myself again. My name is April Almeida. I am a board certified behavior analyst with Cultivate Behavioral Health and Education. So over the years, I've had the privilege of working with individuals of all ages, kids, teens, adults with autism, and also other support needs. But some of my most meaningful work has been alongside parents and caregivers just like you. Today's session is all about one of the most important, powerful, everyday tools that we can use to create positive change, and that's reinforcement. Now, if you've never heard that term before, or if you've heard it, but it's kind of been confusing or clinical, don't worry about it. I got you. This is going to be clear, family friendly, and doable. You don't need a degree in psychology. You don't have to have a perfect home or a perfect child. You just need to have the willingness to try something new and a heart for your child's success. Here's what we're going to explore today. First, what reinforcement actually is and how it's very different from bribery. Because I promise, we are just not handing out candy in the checkout line. We're just not giving out stuff. Then we're going to look at how reinforcement works at home. In real life, whether your child is working on brushing their teeth, using polite words, or managing big feelings, reinforcement can help. Next, we'll talk about what to say and do when behavior gets tough and how we can use reinforcement to shift those moments from chaos to calm. And finally, you'll leave with a simple step-by-step plan that you can put into practice right away. Something you can customize specifically for your child, no matter their age, ability, or communication level. Throughout this session, I want you to feel encouraged, supported, empowered. This is not about doing everything perfectly. It's about building progress, connection, and confidence over time. We're going to keep it positive, practical, and yes, maybe even have a little fun. So if you're ready, we can dive right on in. So let's break this down together. This is one of the most important and misunderstood concepts, reinforcement. So what that simply means is it's just something that happens after a behavior, and it makes that behavior more likely to happen again. That's it. It's not bribery. It's not manipulation. It's how we as humans naturally learn. Reinforcement is happening around us all the time, even if we're not aware of it. So let me give you some examples from just everyday life, no matter what stage you're at. So let's say there's a toddler and they say, all done. Instead of throwing their food and you smile, you let them down from their high chair. That's positive reinforcement. You're adding something good, their response and their freedom to get up. It increases the likelihood that they're probably going to use their words again. So for those that have teenagers, let's say that they empty the dishwasher and you say, thanks, I really appreciate that. That's also reinforcement. You're acknowledging their effort, and that can increase the odds they'll help out again. Could, may not, but it could. If you have an adult, and let's say that they've been learning how to do life skills types of tasks, like folding towels, and then they get a break or they want to go listen to music, that break is a reinforcer. The message that they're getting is that this is worth it, and you can feel good about that. So let's clarify the language a little bit. So positive reinforcement, it just means you're adding something good that the person enjoys. So it's praise, attention, reward, or even just a routine that they enjoy. So for negative, you're just removing something that's unpleasant, like a headache and taking the medication. So like turning off a loud noise or ending a task once the request is made. Just think of it as a relief that teaches. The key takeaway here that I want everyone to remember is it's not about using toys and treats all the time. Reinforcement can be something as simple as a smile, a thank you, a hug, or even just the satisfaction of getting something done. The key is that it happens after the behavior you want to see more of. Reinforcement is universal and it works at every age, from toddlers learning to share, to teens learning to manage emotions, to adults building independence. It also works across all kinds of neurodiversity. And here's something very powerful. You're probably already doing it. That just gives you more chance to do it more intentionally. So when you praise your child, when you give them time with you, when you say yes after they do something helpful, you're reinforcing. So just pause just for a minute and just think about it in your mind about your situation and what does that look like in your home? Because you're probably already doing this. Can you think of a time when your child did something you wanted to see again and you naturally just gave a high five, a snack, a break, anything along those lines? That's reinforcement. Today, we're just going to learn how to do it on purpose. My little slide is messed up. So let's clear up one of the biggest misunderstandings around reinforcement. As mentioned before, it's always confused with bribery, but the timing and purpose behind them are actually completely different. So bribery tends to happen in the middle of a tough moment. Maybe you're in the store or in a car ride and someone starts melting down, crying, yelling, refusing to move. Out of desperation, you say, if you stop, I'll give you a toy. If you stop, I'll give you a snack. If you stop, I'll let you play on the phone. That's bribery. It's offered after the behavior starts and often teaches without meaning to, it's not intentional, that the behavior leads to rewards. And we've all done it probably at one time or another as a parent. I know I have. But let's look at reinforcement. Reinforcement, on the other hand, is actually intentional and is usually planned ahead of time. It sounds like if you stay calm during the appointment, we can stop for a snack after. The expectation is clear from the start, and the reward is connected to positive behavior. That builds a real learning for that individual, and it strengthens trust and predictability over time. The great news about this is that this approach, as mentioned before, works for anyone. It could sound like things such as when you clean up, then we can listen to your favorite song. When your work is done, then we can relax outside. Or first take your medicine, then you could choose a show. So whether your child is learning to wait at the grocery store, your teen is managing screen time, or your adult family member is working through a daily routine, clear timing and intentional follow through is what makes reinforcement effective. So if you're ever in the moment and you wonder, is this reinforcement or bribery? Just stop and ask yourself, was this planned ahead of time? Is the reward tied to something positive? Am I teaching or just managing the moment? There is no judgment because every caregiver has done something out of stress. And the power comes in learning how to shift from reacting to teaching. And that's where the real change starts to happen. So this right here lets you see what the difference is between the bribery and the reinforcement. I'm just going to go down and pull up the slides. See the difference between bribery and reinforcement, a difference that really matters in everyday parenting, teaching, and caregiving. So on the left side, we see bribery. So the bribery usually happens in the heat of the moment, often when emotions are really, really, really high. So picture this. Someone's overwhelmed, maybe melting down, and in a desperate attempt to calm the situation, we say something like, if you take a bath, I'll buy you a toy. It's bribery. So it's offered before the behavior happens, or worse. While the challenging behavior is still going on, and while it may temporarily stop the behavior, it teaches the wrong lesson. The louder or more disruptive you are, the more likely you're going to get what you want. And 9 times out of 10, the behavior continues. But if we look at the other side and we look deeper into reinforcement, this is when the reward comes after the behavior we want to encourage, and it's planned in advance. And it sounds like when you bring an A+ from school, you can choose a piece of candy. The behavior happened first, the reward came next. And it's very structured. And most importantly, it's very teachable. This is how we shape lasting skills and help our loved ones learn how their choices lead to positive outcomes. So let's take a moment and just look at those pictures. On the left, we see a parent in that familiar, overwhelmed state. Like I said, like I'm sure we've all been in it one time or another, just hoping that the meltdown will just stop. And on the right, we see a child proudly earning a reward for doing something great. These are two very different paths with very different messages. The key takeaway here is timing and intention matters. Reinforcement works best when it's thoughtful and it's earned and not reactive. So whether you're supporting someone learning to brush their teeth or someone learning to do respectful communication or practicing independence, the principle is still the same. It's connecting a clear behavior to a meaningful outcome. And once again, you can still do a gut check and you can just ask yourself, what am I trying to teach here? Or am I just trying to survive in this moment? So reinforcement helps build that trust, that consistency, and that real change over time. Bribery just gives you that piece just for the moment, but if you do reinforcement, it actually builds it over time. So why does this work? So one thing that I've noticed just as I've been in the field, and I've worked with so many wonderful families, is that I often hear that behavior just happens randomly. So it doesn't happen randomly. It actually follows a pattern. So there's always a reason to why people do what they do. So reinforcement is the biggest reason, depending on how you look at it and what happens at the end. Behavior does not happen randomly. It follows the pattern. So when we actually understand that pattern, we can actually work with it. So before something happens, maybe you give a direction like, please clean up your toys, or maybe the environment changes, like it's bedtime or someone turns the TV off. The behavior, this is how the person responds to whatever changed. Maybe they start cleaning, maybe they avoid, or maybe they whine a little before they get started. But the after is what's important. This is what you do in response. This is where reinforcement lives. However the person reacts after the behavior is going to determine what can happen in the future. So let's say a child cleaned up without a fuss and you say, awesome job. Now let's do something fun together. That moment, that's where learning happens. you're reinforcing the cleanup behavior. But the same pattern can work for anybody. So let's say I know one of my teens, I needed them to finish their schoolwork. They had to finish their schoolwork in order to have extra time with their friends on their, or even extra time on their phone. So it could be the same thing for a young adult who is trying to complete a daily routine. And then when they get finished with their daily routine, they get to choose a preferred snack or an activity. So even as adults, when we finish tough tasks, we treat ourselves. Sometimes we treat ourselves to coffee, music, downtime, favorite shows, whatever just makes us happy. We're all more likely to repeat something when it comes in something enjoyable. Reinforcement helps people learn what works. It builds trust, it builds skills, and over time builds independence. So let's remember that the behavior is actually shaped by what comes after. So reinforcement is one of the most powerful teaching tools we have when it's used intentionally, respectfully, and consistently. And also remember the flow, the before, behavior, after. Reinforcement is definitely not about perfection. It's about showing your child that positive actions lead to positive outcomes. So let's talk about something many families go through: clothing rigidity. Maybe your child insists on wearing the same exact outfit every single day. Maybe it's a favorite t-shirt that's faded and falling apart, or a certain pair of socks they just won't give up. This kind of preference is very, very, very common, especially for kids or individuals who like routines or have very strong sensory preferences. Here's the key. The goal isn't to force the change overnight. That can feel very, very, very overwhelming for that individual, and it can also backfire. So instead, you want to start small. You could try swapping out one piece at a time, like adding a new pair of socks or layering a sweatshirt over their favorite shirt. This way, the new item feels less threatening. Now, let's bring in a strategy that also helps. If you pair the change with something they already enjoy, it could be their favorite music, their snack, game, cuddle time with you. The ideal is to create a positive experience around the new item. Even if it only stays on for a minute or two, that is still progress. Let me share one of my favorite examples of how we can look at in real life. So one of the families I worked with before had a little boy who wore the same yellow Paw Patrol shirt every single day. They tried hiding it, he found it. They bought duplicates, he spotted every single imposter. So we took a new approach. We called layering. We started by putting a hoodie over the yellow shirt. Then one day he walked out in a brand new shirt because it had a small Paw Patrol badge on it. That was victory. It just took pairing the new thing with something familiar and giving him a little bit of control. That story is just a perfect example of how we can reinforce effort, not perfection, and use small wins to create momentum. So let's get back to how you can try this at home. So the most important part, celebrate effort, not perfection. If they try something new, that's a win. Let them know you noticed and appreciate it. The more we encourage those tiny moments, the more likely they are to grow. Even if they only wear the new item for a minute or two before changing back, that's still a success. You're reinforcing the effort, not the end result. With that consistency, those small wins add up to lasting change. This approach works for toddlers, teens, and adults too, because no matter our age, we all feel confident when we're supported through change instead of being forced into it. It's not about perfection. It's about helping your child feel safe and confident enough to try something different, and that's worth celebrating every single time. So this is another very, very popular real life challenge that we also deal with, or I deal with also. Families experience medication and motivation. So whether you're supporting a child, a teen, adult who takes medication for things like focus, anxiety, seizures, emotional regulation. There's so many different reasons why an individual could be on medication. These medications can be incredibly helpful, but they may also come with side effects. That includes low energy, a lack of appetite, irritability or feeling off that can make even the simplest tasks like brushing hair, eating lunch, sitting down for school, it just feels so much harder for them. Now, just to pause and speak to most of you that's struggling with the ideal of the medication, because I've definitely had some back and forth with a lot, not really back and forth, but I know a lot of parents are always thinking about this. But if you ever feel like uncertain about starting it or conflicted, does this mean I'm not doing enough or anything like that? You are not alone. There are so many parents I have talked to that have felt like that. I've had some that even said that like they feel like they're failing. That is not true. Medication is a very, very, very deeply personal decision. This is not a one size fits all. And choosing to explore or not explore doesn't make you a good or a bad parent. So what matters the most is that you're paying attention, asking questions, and doing the best to support your loved one's needs. And let's be honest, giving medication itself can be so challenging. There are individuals that will refuse it, spit it out, hide it, or just get overwhelmed by the idea of taking it. That can be so stressful when you know the medication is there to help them feel better or stay regulated. If that's your experience, you are not alone. Many families deal with this. Sometimes it is about the texture or the taste. Sometimes it's about control, especially if someone feels like they don't have much to say in their day. Sometimes it's just hard because they don't feel good. And taking something new just feels like, oh, it's just one more thing I have to take. So, some things that you can do for this is just stay calm and predictable. Avoid turning it into a power struggle. Instead of threats and bribes, calmly offer it and just give space. Always use clear, gentle language. Try, after your medication, we'll do a puzzle time, or let's take it quick and then choose the music in the car, or reinforce attempt and not just the swallow. If they hold it near their mouth, sniff it, or even try a new form like a liquid or a chewable, that effort is still worth noticing. Let them feel successful, even if it doesn't go perfectly. Praise the attempt. Say, you were brave. That's how we learn what works for you. Over time, pairing medication with something positive and being consistent helps the process feel less stressful and gives them a sense of control. And if something consistently isn't working, whether it's the form of medication or the side effects, it's okay to go back to your provider and ask about alternatives. You are allowed to speak up and say, this is really, really hard for us at home. Can we please explore some other options? You are adapting, and that's what real support looks like. So on the days when energy is low, focus is off, or motivation is just not there, shift the focus from outcomes to effort. If your child sits down and attempts their homework, even if it's just for 5 minutes, that's still a win. If they pick up their fork and take 2 bites, even if they don't finish their meal, that's a win. One mom that I worked with told me something so simple, but so powerful. She told me her teenage son touched a fork during dinner and she nearly cried. And not because he ate, but because he tried. That night, instead of focusing on what didn't happen, she gave him an extra 10 minutes of music and a huge smile. The next night, he picked up the fork again and took a bite. That was their win. That was their own personal win. So even the smallest step, like touching the fork, can be a meaningful effort worth reinforcing. That's what I mean when I say shift from outcomes to effort. Continuing on, if they try to manage a hard emotion, and even if one kind word instead of yelling, that deserves acknowledgement. Effort counts, especially on tough days. This is when reinforcement becomes your best friend. Let them know you tried, and I see that. You didn't give up. That can be as simple as offering a break, a high five, their favorite activity, or even just saying, I'm proud of you for trying. When someone feels seen for their effort, not just the result, it builds confidence and connection. Over time, that's what keeps them going. And if you're navigating the ups and downs of medication, just know this. You can always ask your provider questions. You deserve to be a part of the decision-making team. Being an advocate doesn't mean you're doubting it. It just means you care. So always lead with compassion toward our loved ones and towards ourselves. So this is another challenge. Celebrate brave thoughts and not just brave actions. This challenge can actually show up at any age. Toddlers, teens, adults. Negative thought patterns like, I'm stupid, I can't do anything right, or why bother? These are things that I also hear even in the field and probably even with my kids. And even harder to break. These patterns are hard to hear and hard to break. They are often from past experiences, frustration, or fear of failure. In these moments, our instinct might be to jump in and just correct their thinking immediately and say, you're not stupid, or you can do it. You can do anything you want to do. But what actually makes a difference is reinforcing those brave moments when our loved ones shift from their thinking even just a little bit. For example, if someone says, I'll try anyway, or that was hard, but I kept going, that was a powerful moment. That's the kind of thinking we want to grow. And that way to grow is through reinforcement. You might offer social reinforcement, like a sincere, I'm really proud of how you kept going, or that was a kind thing to say to yourself. Or you might pair that with something tangible, like earning a preferred activity, choosing what's for dinner, or getting a comfort break. These thought victories matter just as much as behavioral ones, and they need to be celebrated just as intentionally. Remember, reinforcement isn't just for actions, it's about effort, emotion, and mindset too. Because when we reinforce brave thoughts, not just brave actions, we help build confidence, resilience, and long term emotional growth. So let's get practical. There is a simple 5-step recipe for using reinforcement at home, no matter your child's age or support needs. The first step, start small. Pick one behavior to focus on, something specific and manageable, like putting toys away, finishing a task, or saying help instead of yelling. Focusing on one goal prevents overwhelm and builds early success. Second, choose what motivates your child. Think about what motivates them. For little ones, it could be a favorite toy, a song, a game. For older kids or teens or adults, it could just be alone time because sometimes they just want to be alone. Texting a friend, picking a movie, it's just whatever is meaningful to them, not to you, but to them. That's will work the best for them. Use simple, clear phrases. When you blank, then you blank. Like when you put on your shoes, then we'll go outside. If helpful, you can write it down, draw it, or use pictures, whatever form of communication is best. The most important step, and one of the reasons that we'll get into later and why sometimes it doesn't work continuously for a lot of people, is that you have to reinforce quickly every time, especially at the beginning. That quick follow through helps your loved one learn, when I do this, something good happens. Once the behavior becomes more of a routine, you can fade that reinforcement away slowly. Maybe not every time, or it becomes a part of a bigger reward system. The goal is independence with continued support. The key is meeting them where they are, building on their success, and letting reinforcement help make life more predictable and encouraging for everyone that's involved. Simple, clear, consistent. That's how behavior grows, with warmth and trust, one step at a time. So you can try this out as well. So this is your chance. You can make it personal. You can build a simple reinforcement plan that you can actually use today. You can jot it down on a piece of paper. Doesn't matter what age your loved one is. They can be as young as 2, or they can be as they can be in their 40s. It doesn't matter. So, but we can walk through it together. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to think about it. You want to pick a behavior that you want to work on. Just one. We want to keep it simple because we want to keep it small and we want to keep it very achievable. It could be something like asking for help. It could be something like putting shoes away, using kind words, or getting out the door on time. Start where success is most likely. Second, think about what really motivates your loved one, not just what you think they should like, but what really lights them up. Like especially, we know our children, we know what gets them excited. Like if we try something with them and it's like a light goes off in their face and their eyes just get very bright. So we know that something lit up, like something made them happy. So it could be something social, it could be like quality time with you, it could be sensory, like music or movement, it could be just independence, like choosing what to do next. So watch out for what they naturally seek. That's your clue if you're unsure. Third, try something simple. The direct phrase that connects the behavior to the reward. When you brush your teeth and you can play your game, you can write it down, show a picture, draw it, or just whatever you do, just keep it clear and consistent. And fourth, you need to identify the reinforcer, which is kind of like the reward. It doesn't have to be a big thing or cost anything. Think about the short walk. Like it could be a short walk, it could be a favorite snack, music, or even a few minutes of calm down time. Reinforcement is about meaning, not material things. This is a very flexible tool. It's not a fixed contract. As your child grows or changes, so are their interests and their needs. What matters most is that they feel successful, valued, and motivated to keep growing. Reinforcement creates connection. It helps turn hard moments into teachable wins. And when we lead with encouragement and follow through with consistency, the behavior starts to bloom, just like the little child in the picture. So let's pause and talk through some of the questions I commonly hear from parents and caregivers that are totally valid, and they come up at every stage of parenting. The first question is, what happens if it stops working? This is actually quite common. So just like we get tired of watching the same movie or eating the same snack, our kids get tired of the same reward. So when that happens, it doesn't mean that the reinforcement has failed. It just means it's time for a refresh. So try rotating options, letting your child help choose a reward or mixing in something new. Motivation changes, even for us, and reinforcement is meant to be flexible. One thing that I use in my field is I use a reinforcement, I'll call it a reinforcement toolbox. And so as I find like when I'm working with families and children, I am like constantly noticing like what lights them up. And so then I kind of keep that in my toolbox so that it can constantly be rotated out. So they're not constantly having the same reinforcer every single time. So it could be tangible, it could be social, it could be a variety of different things. Another question I've heard actually from parents is, am I spoiling them? No, you're not spoiling your child. If you're reinforcing the effort or growth, you're not. Spoiling is when we give rewards for nothing in return. Reinforcement is earned. So it's just a response to something positive your child did. Just like adults, we earn a paycheck for showing up to work. Kids deserve to know that their effort leads to good things. It's not about bribery or indulgence. It's about connection, trust, and learning. Next question is, how long do I use reinforcement? As long as your child needs it. Some behaviors need support, more support in the beginning, just like training wheels on a bike. As the skill becomes stronger, the reinforcement can fade. Maybe you shift from a reward every single time to every other time, or something more natural like praise or choice making or independence. The goal is to always build confidence and to help the behavior stick, not to rely on the reward forever. And what happens if my child doesn't care about rewards? Sometimes it seems like they don't, but often we just haven't found anything that clicks yet. Motivation doesn't always look like toys and treats. Some people are motivated by routines, movement, music, control, or even time alone. Watch what your child chooses and look for their sparks of joy or calm. That's their currency. And don't underestimate the power of a genuine, loving connection. Sometimes your presence or praise is the most valuable reward of all. If you've ever asked any of these questions, you're already doing the hard part, reflecting and trying. Reinforcement is about, it isn't about perfection. It's about learning how to encourage the behaviors that matter one day at a time. So just a quick recap. Bribery usually shows up in the heat of the moment. So like the meltdown in the middle of the grocery store, and if you say, "I'll stop crying, I'll get you a toy," that's bribery. When we all done, it's a quick fix, but it's not teaching behavior. So one time, when I was at Walmart, and we've all had these moments, I once overheard a mom say this. She was whispering, and she said, "If you stop crying, I'll buy you any toy." I've been here. We've all been here. That moment you wish you might have had a time machine and a sticker in your back pocket. That Walmart moment shows how tempting it is to bribe in the heat of the moment, but the reinforcement is about setting the stage ahead of time. So let's revisit the key differences. So reinforcement is intentional. It happens before the behavior or after behavior, not during a crisis. You might say, when you use calm words at the store, then you can pick out a snack. That's proactive. That's teaching. So if you look at how they compare, the timing, bribery happens mid meltdown, reinforcement happens after the behavior, before and after, because you have to set it up. The purpose, bribery stops chaos, reinforcement builds a skill. Tone, bribery feels reactive and desperate, reinforcement feels calm and clear. Lesson, bribery teaches that big emotions get rewards. Reinforcement teaches that effort leads to rewards. Example, if you stop yelling, I get you a toy. Versus when you stay calm, you can earn a toy. The real question to ask yourself in a tough moment is, am I just trying to survive this situation? Or am I trying to teach a skill? And if it's the second one, that's reinforcement. And like I've continued to mention, no judgment. We've all used bribery when we're overwhelmed. And the good news is, with just a little preparation, you can turn that moment into something more powerful, something that reinforces the behaviors that you want to see again. So this is one of my favorite slides because it shows the power of reinforcement in the real world. These are real examples from families that I worked with and who share stories. What's special about these victories is that they don't require major behavior overhauls, just small, steady changes. So let's start with the first one. My son put his dishes in the sink now without being asked. That didn't happen overnight. It started with a very specific behavior and a clear when then plan. For example, the family might have said, when you put your dishes in the sink, then you can have 5 minutes of tablet time. At first, it took reminders and consistency, but over time, the behavior became a habit and the tablet time faded out. Now it's just something that he does, not because he's forced to, but because it's part of his routine and it feels good to be successful. And that's really the goal. Not to rely on rewards forever, but to use them as a bridge to lasting routines. The second one, my daughter brushed her hair every day this week for music class. For this family, self-care tasks were always a struggle. So they zoomed in on one goal, just brushing her hair before music class. They made it special by tying it to something she loved, choosing the music in the car. That gave her control, pride, something to look forward to. What was once a fight became a tradition, and it didn't require yelling or threats. It just took a bit of creativity and follow through. And here's another one on hygiene, when that came from thinking outside the box. There was this teen that refused to brush his hair. Every morning was a battle. So his mom tried something new. She let him play his favorite playlist while brushing. That 2-minute dance party became their morning ritual. Eventually, he brushed his own hair just so he could get to the playlist faster. So something like a toothbrushing battle became a moment of connection instead. Let's look at more families and how these reinforcement wins went. This one is about a boy who used to scream in a car. Many families relate to this kind of stress during transitions or car rides. In this case, they introduced reinforcement by offering music time for staying calm. If he gave the child, it gave the child something to focus on and look forward to. Eventually, the car became a calmer place, and it turned into a learning moment about self-regulation and rewards. It wasn't about punishment or removing the child from the car. It was about saying, here's how we can make this better together. This reminds me of another car rider story, Victory, that had actually a very happy ending. I had a dad tell me that his son screamed every time he drove past McDonald's because he wanted the fries every single time. So we created a plan. When he stayed calm past McDonald's, he would earn a sticker on the chart. 5 stickers meant he got fries on purpose. 2 weeks later, the screaming stopped. And the dad started yelling, the great French fry truce. Just like that, the family found their calm with fries and patience, and the takeaway is the same. Success comes from steady reinforcement and meeting your child where they are. One polite word a day. That might sound tiny, but it's a powerful place to start. This family decided to celebrate every little sign of respectful language. Thank you, please, or even just a calm tone got a thumbs up and praise. That one polite word turned into 2 and into a pattern. Reinforcement helped grow a skill that improved family dynamics. And when families start to notice and reinforce those wins, the tone of the whole home begins to shift. Let's talk about when it doesn't work. So one thing I hear is that my child doesn't even care about rewards. That usually means either the reward isn't meaningful enough for them or they just don't see the connection yet. Every child has something they find motivating. It just might not be toys or candy. So it could be getting to skip a chore, choosing the music, alone time, extra bedtime stories. You just have to find what makes them light up. Another challenge. It works once, but not the next time. That could mean that the reinforcement wasn't consistent or the behavior wasn't clearly defined. Reinforcement works best when it's specific and it's repeated. Sometimes they just ignore. And if this is happening, it might just mean the instructions they're just not standing out. So try using a clear, calm voice, limiting background noise. It could also mean your child does not fully understand the expectation, or the task just might be too hard for them at that moment. The reinforcement only works best when the child knows what's expected of them and they believe they can succeed. And this right here is probably the most relatable one. It's too hard to be consistent. That's real life. Life is busy, but even small consistency goes a long way. You don't need to do it all day. Just find one time of the day, like bedtime, mealtime, or right after school, when you can consistently use it. Build from there. Reinforcement doesn't have to be a huge production. Even a smile, a high five, or a few kind words even counts. Just in case if it's still not working, check the reinforcer. Make sure it's actually really motivating for the child. If it's too many steps in the process, break it down. They need to be able to understand what is expected of them. Talk about timing. As mentioned before in the previous slides, reinforcement only works when your child is in a space where they can learn. So You need to make sure that they're calm when you're actually giving instructions. If they're already in the middle of a meltdown or emotionally dysregulated, this is not the time to try to introduce reinforcement. In those moments, their brain is in survival mode. They are thinking about rewards, rules, and routines. Instead, you need to pause, offer comfort, say something like, we'll take a break and try again when you're ready. This tells your child, I'm not punishing you, but I'm also not reinforcing chaos. It's a respectful reset. Once things are calm, that's your teachable moment. That's where reinforcement really, really shines. We want our kids to associate effort and calm choices with good outcomes, not just stopping a meltdown to earn a prize. Consistency, consistency, consistency. This is the toughest part for all of us because let's face it, we're busy, we're tired, we've got a million trillion things pulling at us. But even with a little consistency, it goes a long way. So bringing it all together, just real quickly. Step one, pick a behavior, start small, choose something specific and manageable. For example, be more respectful or say thank you once a day. Be more helpful. Of course, we expand on those a little bit more. Step two, we want to find the right motivator. What does your child really enjoy? What do they look forward to? It might not be toys or snacks. It might just be choosing a movie at movie night, getting 5 extra minutes of video game time, or even getting your full attention with no distractions. Step three, create a win-then statement. This is a magic sentence that makes expectations clear and connects the behavior to the reward. It sounds like when you hang up your coat, then you can play your game. Step four, reinforce right away, especially in the beginning. Timing really, really, really matters. The reward has to come as soon as possible after the behavior so the connection is clear. If you wait too long, the moment passes and the child might not understand why they are getting a reward. Don't be afraid to get excited and celebrate. High fives, praise, and smiles, they really do go a long way. And step five, fade it out. Once your child starts doing the behavior regularly, you can slowly reduce how you give the reward. Maybe you can reinforce every other time, or maybe make the reward a little bit smaller. Eventually, the behavior becomes part of the routine. And that's the long-term goal: independence, confidence, and success. And then I'm going to go on and go to this last slide, and then we'll do the questions. But before I wrap up, I do want to say I sincerely thank everyone for being here. I know your time is extremely valuable, and the fact that you chose to spend it learning, reflecting, and showing up for the person that you support, that really, really means a lot. Parenting, caregiving, advocacy is not easy. They're filled with long days, emotional ups and downs, and moments of doubt. But today you chose growth. You chose to invest in something that may not bring instant change, but has the power to build long-term transformation. And that's something to be proud of. My hope is that you're leaving a session with not just information, but encouragement. Maybe you picked up a few strategies you can try this week. Maybe you had an aha moment that helped you reframe a challenge you've been facing. Or maybe you just feel a little bit more seen and supported. Whatever you gain, I hope it carries you forward. And if you ever want to explore more, I would love to share a bit about Cultivate. We're a team of board certified behavior analysts, registered behavior technicians, and support staff who provide compassionate ABA services across homes, clinics, schools, and community settings. We serve toddlers through adults, and we appreciate each person with dignity, care, and a whole family lens. So whether you're looking for in-home ABA therapy and clinic therapy, parent coaching, transition planning, or school support, we're here to help. And even if we're not the right fit, I'm still here. If you need tools, referrals, or just someone to bounce an idea off of, I'll be honored to support you any way I can. You can reach me at my email. I genuinely welcome your questions, stories, or follow-ups. Thank you for being a part of this session. Your presence here today speaks volumes about the love and commitment you bring to your family. And just keep going and keep noticing those small wins. And above all, know that your work does matter. And I am open to